If you're hunting for a spot welder that actually lets you finish that cracked tailgate, fix a busted plastic bracket on a bike, or dabble in a little backyard metal art without pulling a full-size welding rig out of the garage, you probably want something reliable, easy to live with, and worth the money, not just a gadget that lists a bunch of specs on a page. I get it, buying a welding machine feels a bit like stepping into a lab you've never been in. You worry about whether the power will be enough for the jobs you have, if the unit will fit on your workbench, whether you'll spend a fortune on accessories, and what happens if you end up with a machine that looks great on paper but ends up gathering dust. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks actually setting up a 700-watt ultra welding machine, testing it on a mix of automotive sheet metal, a few thin steel brackets, and a couple of plastic housings from an old projector. What stood out right away was how the machine feels in the hand. The housing is a solid metal case that's heavy enough to stay put when you're hammering down a weld, yet you can still carry it from the garage to the driveway without needing a dolly. The Cact Omic design the seller touts is basically a rounded edge that keeps your fingers from snagging on anything while you're swapping heads. The LCD display is where the machine tries to set itself apart. It shows welding time, pressure, and a quick status of the power output. In my experience, the screen is bright enough for a dim workshop, and it actually helped me dial in the right timing when I was welding a 0.8 mm steel panel on my car's door. The first time I set the timer to 0.4 seconds and pressed down, the weld held firmly, but when I pushed it to 0.6 seconds the joint started to look burnt and the surrounding paint bubbled. That instant feedback saved me from overwelding a cheap part that would have needed a replacement later. One of the biggest practical strengths is the 10 interchangeable welding heads. Most spot welders in this price range come with just 1 or 2 heads, meaning you have to improvise or buy extra heads later. With 10 heads, I could switch from a thin-gauge copper head for a plastic repair on a scooter's fuel tank to a more robust copper-nickel alloy tip for a steel frame repair on a garden gate, all without pausing the work. Changing heads is a simple twist lock that takes a couple of seconds, so you don't lose momentum on a job that requires a few different thicknesses. Now, let's talk about power. A 700-watt generator is decent for hobby-level work, but it does have its limits. When I tried to weld a 2 mm steel bracket, the machine struggled to maintain a consistent arc, and the welds were weaker than the ones I got on 0.5 mm material. The unit is clearly designed for thin sheet metal, plastic spot welding, and small-scale repairs. If your shop regularly deals with 3 mm or thicker steel, you'll probably find yourself reaching for a heavier-duty 1500-watt machine instead. That's a hidden trade-off. The power rating looks respectable until you test it on thicker gauge material. Another nuance is the operating frequency, 28 kHz. In theory, the higher frequency should give you a cleaner weld on thin metals, and I did notice less spatter on the plastic parts compared to a lower frequency unit I've used before. However, the higher frequency also makes the unit a bit more sensitive to the quality of the power source. I had to make sure my workshop outlet was well grounded and that I wasn't sharing the circuit with a high-draw appliance. When I plugged the welder into a shared garage circuit that also powered a shop vac, the LCD flickered and the weld time jumped unpredictably. So, if you're in a cramped garage with a single 120V circuit, you might need to add a dedicated outlet or use a surge protector with proper grounding. Who should consider buying this spot welder? First, the weekend warrior who spends a few evenings a month fixing rusted car panels, patching plastic clips on appliances, or building small metal sculptures. Second, a small auto body shop that mostly works on thin body panels and needs a portable unit that can be moved from bay to bay. Third, hobbyists who enjoy tinkering with electronics enclosures or repairing bike frames, anyone who values the quick change heads and the visual feedback from the LCD. Who should probably skip it? Professional fabricators who routinely weld thicker structural steel, anyone who needs a high-amperage machine for large-scale manufacturing, and workshops that rely on a single circuit for multiple heavy tools. The 700W rating and the limited maximum thickness mean you'll hit a ceiling quickly if your projects go beyond thin sheet work. Also, if you're looking for a fully digital controller with programmable pulse patterns, this unit stays fairly basic, just time, pressure, and power.